Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 37 of Rooted in Wisdom, a daily dose of Donna. I am Donna Nelson, the host of Rooted in Wisdom, a daily dose of Donna. Today, I am sharing with you understanding the shadow of our dark emotions. And if you're new to this series, welcome. Whether you want to up your game in business, have better relationships, make more money, more abundance in all areas of your life, mental, physical, emotional well being, and just feel more spiritually connected on your journey to wholeness, you need to know how to get there. And it takes a foundation rooted in wisdom of both science and soul. So that's what this series is about. If you've missed some of the series, want to go catch more of them, you can go over to my YouTube channel, which is Donna Nelson, and you can see all of these and so much more. So welcome. So today, as I mentioned, I want to talk about this really interesting data that um, someone had posted in a Facebook group yesterday. It's all working women. And over 600 women have answered the question of what emotion would you like to get rid of? Or something like that. So I actually posted it yesterday to see what all you thought the answer to that might be. And so there were a couple of things that were really surprising about that particular post and how many women answered it with the emotions that they wanted to get rid of. And the two dominant um, emotions that these women shared that they would love to shake are fear and anger. And I was so surprised. And while I know very often, because I hear it with my clients too, when I say, you ask about emotions, most people don't really know what their emotions are, right? They're like stress. Stress is not an emotion. Insecurity is not an emotion. Self-doubt is not an emotion. But these are sometimes some of the things that we say, and that was learned yesterday too, right? People were spouting out all kinds of things that were not really emotions, but it was um, part of them, part of their identity, part of their experience that they wanted to release or get rid of. And so fear is kind of, I kind of put that in the same category as stress almost, right? Because it's kind of like this overarching thing that can mean many different things, right? Or is a source that's rooted from many different things. So, but here's what I wanted to share today and talk about. Wow, why are so many women so damn angry, right? Why are they so afraid? What are they afraid of? And what are they damn mad about? So here's what I know, and this is what I'm going to speak to today, and that is these shadow aspects of ourselves. These parts of us that have experienced toxic stress, parts of our lives experiences that have been exposed to some negative environment. And it could be abuse, it could be, I always say trauma, and sometimes people don't know what that is, but it could be something what we would consider relatively small, right? Like me, maybe being picked on by our siblings and then our parents not protecting us or validating our feelings, and all the way up to things like sexual abuse or being exposed to domestic violence, either physically experiencing it or witnessing it, and or you know witnessing any kind of thing. I think about a car accident that I had when I was in my 20s and the trauma from that, right? So trauma comes in many, many different ways. And it could just come from maybe even, I'll say, well, we don't consider it necessarily generally like in our conversations as trauma, but just attachment, not being emotionally supported by our caregivers from a young age. So it can mean many different things. So when I say shadows, I mean those parts of us that we've pushed down, that we've piled other things on top of, with positive, mindset, or trying to, like, be successful, or whatever those things are that have covered up and um, not revealed and made us really have to deal with these shadow experiences that we've had. But I will tell you that they all come to the surface sooner or later. And what I believe is that the pandemic, this whole year plus, that we've all been kind of, our lifestyle has been forced, like there's been pressure applied to the way that we've always lived. And that pressure, I feel like I just talked about this, but I'm going to share it again in a different light. But, this pressure is forcing more stuff on top of us. So it's what I call, well, I don't call it, I'm taking it from someone else, right? It's load, our stress load, our pressure, the things that keep piling onto our life. Eventually, we get to the point where it starts oozing out, right? Like it has to, the seams are bursting, right? Where you can't take any more load. And so what that starts to show up, I mean, we a lot of parents are reporting this, seeing this in their kids, right? People are reporting seeing this in the workplace. We're seeing it among politicians, right? Where there's just this rage because people have gotten this load and they can't take it anymore. So now it starts coming out. And so it's coming out in the form of anger and fear. But it's not like what's happening now, it's what's been happening, it's what already happened. And now this stuff piling on is just manifesting it even bigger and making it seem even bigger, but it's really not one thing, it's not two things, it's probably 200 things that have not been dealt with. And so it's important that we deal with these shadow aspects of ourselves, these past experiences that we've been getting away with not facing, that are now coming to the surface for so many. And so if that's you and you're feeling like, why am I so frustrated? Why am I so angry? Why do I feel on edge all the time? Right? I'm just like fearful, like what's the next thing that's going to happen? Right? Not to me, but maybe my job, maybe my family, in the world, whatever those things are. This is a accumulation of experiences. So so we can't blame the pandemic. This is a lifetime often of experiences that have come to a head of, like, the volcano starting to explode. So while I can't necessarily answer why so many women are angry and fearful, I can speak to what I know is happening, and that is not a one event. It's not a one lifetime experience. It's not a what's happening right now. So, one of the, through, to explain this, Bessel Vanderkolk, he's an expert in the field of trauma. He's a psychiatrist. He's well known all over the world for his work, and his research and sharing his case studies, his own life experiences. He wrote a book by the title of The Body Keeps the Score. So fascinating. And in his book, the idea of behind the book is about trauma and how every experience that we have is stored in the body, good, bad, or whatever, right? But for sure, because this is where we feel like we're out of balance, or we have this dysfunction, or these things about us that we don't like, or these emotions that are coming up that we can't control, and we don't know why we're behaving this way or why we feel this way. And so in his book, The Body Keeps the Score, and in his work, he talks about how these toxic stresses that we're exposed to are stored in the body. So when we experience something that we don't have the, the skills to know how to process, right? Where we get like this freeze response and this trauma, we hold it in our body, right? Like we freeze and we don't know how, I'm trying to say, we don't know how to process through it. So now from that, not only is it created something in the brain that trigger, which is a protective mechanism, by the way. So the brain is like, hey, don't let that happen again, right? I'm going to keep this memory here to remind you that anytime something similar happens, that you react because you know you're in trouble. And so, and that can happen even in small ways. As I was thinking about this tonight, I have no idea where this came from, but I was thinking, well, I was reading an article actually, and then this came to mind. But thinking about even as a child, this is something that my mom would do, and that I saw other parents like from my era do. I mean, it seems so little sometimes, as you know, when we're growing up in that environment, we don't think about the impacts of it. But it was one of these things where, um, if you're goofing off, say something silly or something that's not like aligned with your family values or whatever, it's just considered wrong, whether it was a behavior or something you said. And my mom would be walking by, or she'd be in the other room or whatever, she'd come and smack you on the top of the head, right? Or hit you on the back or something. And when this becomes common practice, that you learn a behavior that every time I make a mistake, or if I say something that might offend someone, I'm going to get hit, then your body becomes pretty darn tense. And then you become really fearful of expressing yourself. So now you have like this bottled up energy around, I can't say, and then perfectionism, shows up because I can't say anything wrong because I might get hit, even though in the workplace, nobody is going to hit you. Chances are your spouse is not going to hit you for saying something that might be wrong or offensive or whatever, right? So our body learns this. So, but the point is that our body holds on to that negative experience, and over time, it can grow into resentment and anger. And it would certainly be understandable that something like that would manifest into anger, because you can't say anything back like, hey, stop that, because you'll get hit again, right? So, and then your body develops this fear response, because then every time you say something, you're automatically triggered thinking, is somebody going to hit me? So it's, this may not have anything to do with what happened with those women, but I'm speaking about, this is how the body holds on to the traumas that we experience. So, and it may not have anything to do with physical interactions, right? I was speaking about or referenced about a car accident. It could be anything that we're in a situation where we don't know how to deal with it, and we don't get to process through the energy of the situation, either because we don't get to say something, or we're in such shock that we can't. And then maybe our feelings are dismissed immediately, where we're not nurtured enough to process through it, especially as small children. And so all of these kinds of things that happen to us throughout our life just keep piling on this load. And so what Bessel it says is that there's really three ways to process through our trauma. And one most of us are familiar with, right? And that's talk therapy. But he also speaks to how very limited talk therapy is for processing through trauma. So, and then the second one, which happens with most people when they go to, as he is, a psychiatrist or a therapist, they get referred to a doctor to get a prescription. And the prescription then, I call it numbing out, but it really is, it's shutting down the alarm center of the brain. So it kind of is numbing out. And that's why a lot of people that take psych medications say they feel a little numbed out, a little dull, because that's what they're supposed to be doing so that your body doesn't like go into having rage or panic attacks. And then the third one is what he talks about is the bottom up. And this is what I do in my work with clients, and that is the whole mind body connection. So this is really the basis of most of his work at this point, is that whole mind body connection. And that in therapy, in the mental health space, the one piece that is often neglected is this work around integrating our body focused treatments. So that could be embodiment, it could be energy work, meditation is can be part of that, mindfulness practices. There's lots of different practices to get into the mind and body and help process out the emotions, EMDR. I mean, there's a lot of different modalities so that are bringing in, integrating mind and body to help process emotion. But that is the most important piece to understand, is that this bottom up, that the experiences bringing the feeling in. So always in when I'm working with people, it's about to understand the mind body connection. You have to feel the body. And often we get and this is why these dark emotions like anger and resentment and fear really show up, right? They show up as really big because they get exaggerated, but not only from the pressure and all, the load, the bottle is full, you can't put any more in it, right? But we have to feel the body. It's almost a forced way that the body is feeling, that it has to just be that forceful, because we're not used to tuning into the body and feeling the subtle emotions, being tuned into the messages of our body, our intuition. So it takes like big energy to actually have a feeling, a sensation in the body, to even notice our emotions and how our body is feeling. So to work through these pain, that we've isolated really within our body, is to get tuned into the body and to feel. And the way that we do that is through getting present and being still. And if you haven't noticed, most people in this day and age have a big problem being still. And the reason often that we can't be still is because when we are still, we start to feel. And what we start to feel feels uncomfortable. And when it feels uncomfortable, we can start to feel those emotions getting bigger. And just like the trauma that we didn't know how to process, we don't know how to process those emotions. And we're afraid, often this is what I hear, is that I'm afraid to feel these emotions because if I start crying, I'll never stop, right? And then I don't even know what to do with all of that. So it does really take some care and some true gentleness to process through some of these things. So when someone is experiencing a lot of these emotions and that they can't be still and they don't want to feel them, then it's really good to work with someone to help get to the root of that and gently work through them, really one by one. And I'd love to be able to help someone with that if they're having a challenge in that area, to just message me and we can talk about how that might work for you and what might work best for you. So what else did I want to share about that? I think that was really the only things that I wanted to say. It was just so fascinating seeing so many of the numbers, and that those were the two emotions that I totally was not expecting to see. But the importance of not living within those, because the other piece of that is okay, so great. Now we understand. All right, yeah, there's some trauma. Yeah, there's been too much pressure and too much extra like 2020 was just too extra, right? So it's understandable that people are angry and living in fear of all the stuff that has been laid before us. The the biggest harm though out of all of this is staying in that space. So staying in the fear, staying in the anger, staying in the resentment, staying in the frustration, they're all in the same camp. And that is the harm that it's doing to your body. So, besides the fact that it creates dysfunction across all areas of your life, because if you're afraid all the time or you're angry all the time, it's going to affect the quality of your work relationships, your home relationships. It's going to, affect your energy level. It's definitely causing inflammation and other health issues, if not short term, but long term. So any of these um, shadow emotions that are the heavy ones, the negative ones, they're draining your energy. And so we can't afford to have, as we're working to be our best self and up level our life and grow and support others, and others are depending on us in numerous ways. An energy loss is not something that you can afford. So shifting these energy to something more empowering, is not just deciding that I'm going to be positive today and I'm just going to read my mantra and I'm just going to like journal all these great things and just envision my future. Well, I mean, those are tools. Uh, but if you're doing that, I'll say kind of like in resistance to letting go and processing through the trauma, it's still living in your body and causing harm to your body. This is what we know about the research from epigenetics. It's what we know about um, all the quantum healing energy that's coming out. I mean, all the trauma. I mean, all the new evidence is telling us holding on to negative emotions causes toxic stress in the body, which causes inflammation, which makes you sick, and causes health complications long term, on top of just being freaking tired all the time. So anyway, that's my wisdom for today. If you want more information on that, or if I can support you in any way through whatever you're going through, reach out to me and I will give you some resources or see how I can support you on a deeper level. All right. Good night.